This is Darth Daddy and Elias from Customs for the Kid. Uh, we've been listening to what you've been saying in your comments, and you guys have asked to if we could take the time to interview Empire Toy Works. And yeah, we reached out to Chris Shaler, Empire Toy Works, and he agreed to come on with us. How's it going, Chris?
I'm great.
All right. Well, yeah, this is really cool for us to be able to interview you. We've been longtime fans. I remember when you first started posting in the room. It was just that little table playset area of Rock Gut Station. But I also noticed that you're also an action figure customizer. You're a vehicle customizer. What did you customize figures and vehicles first, and then develop into doing Rock Gut Station, or did Rock Gut Station come first, and those things kind of just filled in what you had built?
I've always dabbled with messing with figures one way or another. Um, Even as a kid, I would modify or do something with the figure, chop off a part, replace it with something else, and uh, and then eventually, I started seeing guys online, and this is probably late '90s or so, and you would see little dribs and drabs of guys doing something with action figures, and the bigger stuff, the dioramas and things like that, really weren't a big thing at that moment. Um, but it was just mainly taking figures, doing something, adding paint, replacing heads, doing something like that, boil and pop method, and all that. All of that started kind of expanding, and I would kind of mess around with it a little bit, but I really wasn't sure, what I could do with like a structure, making something, you know, a building, a living space, or something like that. And I just started kind of merging more and more toward that area.
Now, do you have a background in carpentry?
A little bit. My dad had always worked in wood.
Okay.
Family had we had a family business where we made custom staircases,
Okay.
and so with that over the years, I had a crazy amount of unlimited amount of scrap wood at my disposal, and I could do basically whatever I wanted to with it. But I never really merged the two together. I didn't think like my passion for toys and then this woodworking ability, what I could do when I blended those two together, and then that's what slowly kind of led toward me, making this back here.
Yeah, so it started off as a table. What was the table originally used for?
It was a Thomas the Tank Engine play table that my kids had,
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
I totally could have made like a more substantial table, but something about the shape of it I liked. And then I always had this future plan where when they got older, that I would just basically swipe the table from them and do what I wanted with it, and I wanted to make some sort of Star Warsy type Blade Runnery looking thing, some kind of playset that you could access all the way around. And so I took the table and I kind of beefed it up, and I didn't know how heavy it was going to be. And it probably needs to be beefed up even more, but I know it has several hundred pounds of wood, rest on.
Wow.
But it was just a slow process of, I always mentally knew I kind of wanted to do some sort of city, but I just didn't know to what degree it was going to go. Originally I was just going to be this one single platform, like in the middle of the room. You can kind of slide it around and then access it and do whatever you wanted to with it. And then once it got so heavy, it just pretty much, I realized it was going to stay in one spot and get.
Yeah.
And then over the years, I realized I could expand up the walls and up the ceiling and everything else, making it an entire immersive complex.
How many years has it taken so far to put that all together?
Um, I'm not sure. I want to say, I remember in 2009, Borderlands came out, the video game Borderlands. I
Yep.
played it religiously. I absolutely loved it. And I watched a lot of Deadwood. I loved that. And Borderlands has a lot of Western elements, mixed
It
in with it.
does. Yeah.
So I knew that I could kind of take the action elements of Borderlands, along with that whole community, that lawless community of Deadwood, and do something where there was like this living city that could kind of grow on its own by doing that.
Now, as far as like the original structures, what made you decide, like, I want to do a courtroom, I want a hotel over here, I want a Blue Waffle nightclub over this way?
The very first building was the motel, and I kind of took Rock Gut as in a way of where it was, I was going to plan it out like it was a shopping mall,
Okay.
not was a shopping mall, but when you're constructing a shopping mall, you usually, what I imagine, you start out with the anchor stores, the J.C. Penney, the Sears, the things that you really, really want to have. And I
Yep.
didn't know where they were going to be placed. I didn't know if they were going to be placed at the corners, the ends, in the middle, wherever. So the very first building, which is pretty much the tallest building, was the motel. And I figured that was kind of a good area that you would have this sort of interaction. It was a tall, like, skyscraper. It only has four rooms in it, so
Yeah.
it's not that, but it's not the Hilton or anything. But but it at least gave three different rooms that you could do something with, and then it had the landing platform. So that kind of gave you, along with the exterior, you had three rooms. You had a landing platform on the top, and then from there I could kind of decide, I've got this area that you could have all sort of riffraff coming to stay, doing something with, landing on top on the roof. Then what else would I need? And then, of course, a bar, a cantina of some sort. So that was, I think, the next building that I had done. And then once I had those, I didn't really know what it was called, but I know when I looked online, I found these cities like Kowloon, walled city, where you just had this claustrophobic, this maze of structures that were thriving. It was like an anthill, of people, these termites, these people, and they all made it work. And almost each level had its own little government going on. This old, you had gangs running this floor, but then some other rival gang running that. So I knew
Yeah.
I could do something like that, and I didn't even know what it was called until like recent, like parasitic architecture, where you would have these buildings, these established buildings, and then you would have things growing off of them. So I would imagine with rock gut, in my mind, it started out as like a mining colony, and then the government, the corporation, just abandoned it, and then some pirates came along and they took it over, and then some other groups came over, and then you had this, like, just sort of this riffraff of squatters that would just over the years just sort of keep building onto it, and then turning it into this elaborate thing. And then once I had these main, large structures established on there, I could kind of see what little areas I had in between. And I hadn't really locked the buildings down at the moment either. So
Oh, okay.
I built,
They were movable at the time.
yeah, at the moment they were movable, I made the base of each building so that it was almost like a jigsaw piece, but not as curly, cute, where it was just kind of angular. And I wasn't really sure if the main floor was going to have curbs, exactly what it was going to look like. But I knew that I could take it and move it around on the city at first to kind of see what was going on, and if I needed to add this more important structure, then I could kind of nudge something over a couple inches to see what's going to happen.
Oh, that's cool.
And then eventually, once everything started kind of filling in, then I could kind of have these extra pieces, floor pieces, to kind of fill in those odd shapes that were left over, so that way the main base floor of the platform would be completely flat. And then eventually, once I had those buildings locked in place, and I had these other areas that I could kind of build off of, and that was the good thing about working with wood, is that it's hardy enough that you can kind of keep adding on to the outside of it without it starting to kind of collapse.
I agree. Yeah.
And that was one thing, over the years, like the Frank Diora, his dioramas and all that. I looked at his site for years, getting ideas of stuff, but it was every time I tried to get into building with foam core or cardstock or anything like that, I always got so frustrated with it, because it was where I wasn't used to that kind of medium, that kind of material.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Just sometimes learning how to cut foam board properly can be frustrating in itself.
and I knew that I wanted it to be heavy, just heavy and in your face, and something that was just going to keep growing out and up and everywhere else. And that was the only thing, was that you can kind of do that with foam core. But the only problem is that I guess at that scale, at 1/18th scale, once you start getting higher and higher, it's going to start lending itself to wanting to bend or sway or crinkle.
I agree.
When you're making something smaller, like a display for a museum, a hotel establishment, whatever it may be, you can kind of go with a much smaller scale, and then the structure itself of the foam core can kind of take that, because you're getting very tiny. But when you're getting with these buildings, these 4-inch people, you kind of have things spaced apart, and you want as much open area to kind of get in there and do stuff, play, take pictures, whatever, without a whole lot of columns and girders and everything else. So that's where I kind of took the ideas of the foam core stuff I was seeing, and since I knew how to work with wood, then I kind of blended the two together.
Now, do you need a full-blown workshop, wood shop, just to even create the pieces that you have? Like a lot of the edges look like a router's been used and sanding,
Right.
like you use sanders.
Yeah, my family had like I said, they had a custom wood shop. It was basically the size of a football field under roof, so it was huge, filled with every possible tool and machine you could think of to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And a massive pile, multiple piles of scrap wood that would just be chunked anyway. So on weekends, I would take it, chop it up, kind of make these, different varying sculptures, or, and I wasn't really sure what the shapes were going to be. Sometimes I would just make a wood box and then put a door on it and just see what happens, from there. I would almost let it kind of build itself. If I've got a blank wall, then maybe I can attach it to another blank wall and then see what happens from there. Add a staircase, a bridge, catwalk, whatever, a balcony, and then and just let it kind of take its own shape, with it. Because that's, in my mind, that's kind of what the spaceport did. Was if the people lived there, if they had a little 10 by 10 area, they're just going to put a little shop there. They're going to build this, and just let it go. There's
that grows organically, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I had a lot of the tools there, a lot of the machinery.
Do you still have that machinery now?
Yeah. My family still owns the business and all that.
Oh, okay. So you still have access, so you can still keep adding on.
But anymore, in the past year or so, I've pretty much phased all of my wood stuff over to being custom cast stuff. So I'll make a master model out of wood, and then I'll take that, modify it how I need to, and then I'll take a massive mold of it, and then that way I have this basic structure that's easier for me to produce, quicker for me to produce, and and the great thing is that I can mold it or cast it in whatever color plastic I want, because I'll dye the resin.
Okay. Yep.
Like a kind of a puke green building, then that way that building, instead of me spray painting the whole thing, I can actually mix it up and make it that pukey pea green, for that. And that way the color is through and through, all the way through the walls of the building itself. So if I drill a hole through it, another doorway, a window, whatever it may be, it's going to retain that same green color all the way through it.
Gotcha. Yeah, we do that. We dye our head cast black. That way, when we go to prime or do any kind of dry brushing, the black is already there underneath, and
Right.
So I know exactly. I never realized you were using resin cast. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty much. Since late last summer, I think was the pretty much kind of the last wood production building anyway. Because like I said, I still build stuff with wood. It's just that I'll concentrate just on that one master model, and then from there I'll try to make it so that I can mold it in pieces however I need to, and then any of the additional pieces that I have that I've molded before, then I can kind of add the two together and just let it go. And essentially it's the exact same thing as what I was doing. It's just now I'm just mainly focused on the resin. And the great thing is that the resin is just as strong as the wood for the most part, because I can still stand on it. I can still test, and it's going to hold its shape. It's going to hold its structure, so you can stack them up. So I'll design a lot of buildings so that you could stack them. They're very modular. You can move them around, do what you need to with them.
Now, is the resin a lot lighter than the wood would be, like when it comes to shipping it and things like that?
A little bit. It depends on the building, how crazy I get, how many details I'll add to it. But for the most part, it is going to be a little bit lighter than what the wood was. And mainly because with the wood would tend to be a bit more brittle, whereas the resin now that I get, it's going to have a little bit more flex to it. Get it thinner, but it's still just as strong. But yeah, the wood, I mean, a lot of the wood I was using was about a 1/2 inch thick. Sometimes some of the main platform on rock gut is about 3/4 inch thick. So it's a heavy chunk just for a flat surface, for like with this. But I couldn't necessarily build this just strictly with resin. So this rock gut itself pretty much had to be wood.
Yeah.
But then I was able to add the resin pieces to that to kind of just keep letting it grow and all the detail, with it, all the greebly pieces and all that.
Now, because it grew organically, when it came to doing the lighting, was it difficult to incorporate the lighting into it? Because you have like flashing signs, you have sometimes like balconies with a
Right.
lighting strip going along them. Like you have so many different varieties of types of lights. There's like
Right.
Christmas lights in there.
Yep.
Is it difficult to incorporate all that in and bring it all to like a local power source? Like, do you power it with like a plug? Do you power it with batteries?
Originally, the very first lighting I used was like the floral rice lights that you get, the
Yep.
little lights. And I had each individual building. This is back when it was much smaller, and I probably had 7 lit buildings on it. And I was using those battery packs. Well, pretty much every week I was going through about 24 batteries,
Oh,
these
wow.
AA batteries, and I realized, either my kids were leaving them on or I was leaving them on. Um, so it just got to be, it wasn't practical to use it as a battery source, at least for this big. If you have a small
Yeah.
vignette on a shelf, then that's perfect. But I realized that this thing, as big as it's going to get, and I could do so much more if I just lit the entire complex. So that's when I kind of looked into doing like mainly LEDs, and by that time LEDs were already starting to kind of drop considerably in price. So I
Yeah.
could go to a store. Mainly, well, look on Amazon. You can find all kinds of different sets on there, and I could find them on there either in white, the cool white, warm white, whatever, and then that way I had this kind of hodgepodge of different tones of lighting that was going on, and um, and I could kind of mix the two, and then for the wiring of it, I just snaked the wire as best I could, throughout the place, wherever I could. The great thing about doing this in this style, this sort of slummy type style, was that you didn't have to make it pretty. You could
Yeah.
have it exposed. Um, and one of the greatest inspiration, when you're looking at Blade Runner, and you see these buildings, but you notice all this the large piping that's all around the buildings, these conduits, these ridged conduits that are all up and down the building. And especially if you watch the documentary Dangerous Days, you
Yeah.
get to see it where it's not lit cinematically. You get to see how it is. And then you really get to see these conduits, this piping all snaked around it. And it's not meant to look pretty. It's meant to look busy and grungy and gross and used and lived in. Very utilitarian. So that's what I was kind of going with this, is that I did not have to hide anything. All the wiring could be exposed. I might put some cable covers over it to give it even more texture. But then from there, it's just snaking everything underneath the main platform. And the funny thing is, all of the lights for the entire like 10 by 10 area that is the whole rock gut area, it's all going into like one power strip that's in one plug. One.
Wow.
So I mean, I don't know if that's safe or not, but so far I haven't had any problems.
Yeah.
No, not. Everything's working fine. It has been for several years. So far so good with it.
Was there a big increase in the electric bill?
No, it's all LED, so it's hardly anything.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And I and
That's
I've
pretty cool.
and I've been guilty of leaving it on for over the weekend. I forget. I'll come back up. I'll go in on a Friday night. Mess around with it or something. Leave it off, or leave the room, and then I'll come back and realize that everything's still lit up. And it's
Yeah.
still strong. So far so good. But yeah, with it being LEDs, I didn't. And the good thing about with LEDs, you don't have to worry about the heat source. With it, so nothing really gets hot.
Yeah.
Leave them on for years at a time, and everything's good. And for the most part, I can easily replace anything lighting wise. It's going to be a pain, but I can still replace it if I need to. Even
Okay.
if I change white lights to colored lights, so.
Now, I noticed like your paint scheme has pretty much maintained consistency over the years. Every time you add to it, you have like almost a theme in your palette. What is there any like particular thing that influenced the color scheme that you used?
I have no idea what I'm doing. I honestly don't.
It just like the contrasts are all so perfect.
Yeah,
Like you have a really good eye.
and originally I was thinking like rock. When I was planning it out, I was just going to go for very muted tones, something very dark and moody and dreary. And I had no intention on adding like any kind of vibrant colors to it. But then once I started kind of building these things back and forth, I realized that if I take whatever color I wanted, usually just something that's kind of washed out like a muted color,
Yeah.
and if I took that's something that looks worn. I could take pretty much any color I wanted to, blue, orange, whatever. And once I put a wash over it, then it kind of it just mutes it down even more so. So it looks like if you went to some kind of gypsy carnival or some kind of like celebratory trailer park type bash that's going on. It's colors everywhere, but they're all dingy and lived in, and then that's
Yeah.
the charm of it. So it has like this carnival look to it. where it's meant to be like this celebration, but everything's worn and lived in.
I noticed your weathering is very good as well. Like when you look like the porta potty over by the motel, and just the paint scheme and like the dirt and the grime. Did that take a while to develop that type of a weathering pattern? Like what tips and like tricks could you like pass on to people who want to try and implement that into their customizing?
I pretty much use almost exclusively what I call like a doo-doo brown.
Hmm.
Like just a very just basic brown acrylic, nothing special, nothing expensive. And I'll take it, and a lot of guys will water them down. They'll thin it down with water, the acrylic, and you can do that. And I do that on a regular basis. But sometimes I'll just use it straight out of the bottle. And a lot of that kind of depends on whatever the texture of the surface that I'm putting it on, and then how much grit and grime when you put it on there and you wipe it off. That's kind of the play of it in and of itself. It's not necessarily the paint, but it's how you're wiping it, how hard you're wiping it, how much you're wiping off. Because I know half the bottle that I use, on a regular basis is probably going to go on a rag anyway.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of it too, is knowing kind of the direction of the wipes that you're doing on it, and just you can layer it also. In certain areas that look like it's a high traffic area, I might go with a little bit of a heavier wash on it. But a lot of times it's just straight brown that I'll put on it.
Now, when it comes to like building the structures that you've built on the walls and on Rock Cut Station itself, how long does it take to like build like one, maybe like a motel, or to build out like the diner?
I think with the motel, and that was, like I said, the very first building I did, and I really wasn't sure the shape of it. I just kind of went, I'm going to start with a rectangle and then see where it goes from there. And then that's when I started kind of adding, different exterior, portions onto it, corners and things like that, just something to make it kind of look dynamic. And I think I did it maybe over a weekend,
Okay.
making it, but I wasn't sure what kind of color I was going to go with. And I guess with that being sort of like a very washed out orange, kind of a dark, dingy brown orange, rust orange, that kind of set the mood for everything else, going with it. I kind of, started with that color, and then everything else kind of was to go with that, even if it contrasted it at the same time. It kind of set the, I guess it's kind of set the color palette based on what that color was.
Pretty much everything was a contrast off of that, and then the contrasts just kind of built off of each other as it grew.
Right.
Okay.
But probably a weekend of building the actual building, and then maybe another day of just spray painting it, getting it where I want to sand it, spray paint it, sand it, and then go from there. But a lot of times the what takes the longest is the detail work. Any of the little things, if you want to put like some sort of atomic powered air conditioner on the side of it, whatever it may be, it's figuring out where all those little pieces are going to go and where they're going to make sense. And the main thing is knowing that it's not going to, just that one little piece is not going to mess up where you're going to plan on doing something else that's going to attach to it, because that can derail the whole thing. If I didn't plan anything with this, it's just sort of like a lot of times you leave an area blank and wait and see what's going to happen with the other stuff that's adjacent to it, to see if, okay, nothing's in the way, I can add a little bit more here and there, a water tower, some kind of processing unit, whatever it may be, a generator. And then you can kind of, add all these little ugly warts, to the side of it, and then see where it goes, from that. But yeah, the detail work, the greebly stuff, the weathering, a lot of that can kind of go quick, but it's just knowing placement of it. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, so it actually makes sense, and it almost tells a story rather than just being there for no reason.
Right. Yeah. Because you could have a pile of stuff that you have that can panels and like I said, generators, all this kind of thing, and you can just slap it on wherever you want to. But it even though it doesn't have to do anything, meant to do anything, you want to put it in a placement where it does make some sort of sense, where it's going. So that way, or something that kind of jives with whatever the function of everything else that's going on around it. And then also like the cables, like power cables and all that, if you want them to dangle, that they're not going to overlap a balcony or a catwalk or something that you intended to put along that path. You don't want guys ducking underneath this stuff as they're walking, to it. So it's
Yeah,
little things like that. But a lot of times those are things that I would add after a lot of the other elements kind of go around it.
that makes sense. Now, is this something that you consider to always be a continuous work in progress?
I'm always working on it.
Yeah,
I'll cast new things, new little pieces, and I'm like, oh, that would look good, really, right there.
yeah,
There's a lot of flat panels that are, hidden along the walls of the structures on rock gut, um, that I can always add more to it. I don't know what. I try not to plan too much with it. I just wait and see what happens, with it.
now when did you make the like, now the vehicles, like when you started custom, you have some really cool Star Wars custom vehicles
Thank you. Yeah.
that populate Rotgut. As that, have you been customizing Star Wars vehicles for a long time, or is that something that you did just to kind of fill Rotgut out?
No, I always had a love for like messing with the vehicles, even with the GI Joe stuff. As a kid, and adding something to them, especially with the Star Wars stuff. If I could go to a flea market, get a bin of just some dirt vehicles. These things are beat up, they're missing wings, cockpits, whatever, and just being able to add something else to them. And then with Rocket, the good thing about it is that I don't have to be precise with the vehicles. They can look like they've been chewed up and spat out, and they fit right on in, with it.
Yeah.
So it's a blending of all that, kind of going together.
So do you have like a big area just full of fodder where you could just grab stuff and like make stuff on the fly?
I've got bins like all over the place for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. Same here.
Literally is filled with, I don't even know, thousands of parts and pieces that I've collected. I had no intention or no knowledge of what I was going to do with them. But now that's the good thing is that if I get this idea, I can go up in the attic, look through some boxes. Oh yeah, there's my a batch of wings that I had, or whatever it may be, that I can use, for this stuff.
Now, do you plan on living there the whole rest of your life and like never moving?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah.
All right, that's good. Transition where it's like a playroom for kids now, playroom for like grandchildren later.
Right. Yeah. Well, my kids don't really play with it. I'm the only one that plays with it now. So
How old are they now? Because they were younger when you first built it.
Yeah. Yeah. My son Lee is 15. I've got another son Jack that's 12.
Okay. Yeah. So they're
the Fortnite and stuff like that. But the cool thing is, they still kind of get involved with it.
oh, good.
Still into it. But they give me ideas a lot of times too. Like, hey, it would be cool if you added something like this, over here, something along those lines. So they're sort of like my research and development on the outskirts. Every once in a while.
Yeah. Now, did they participate in building any of this and painting it or anything?
Sometimes they do. If I have a whole slew of things that I'm custom stuff that I'm working on, like for selling, production type stuff, and I need some help, with weathering, then they'll come in there and they'll mess with it maybe for 15 minutes, and then they don't like
they're out of there. Yeah,
around all over their hands, So then, yeah, that's when they kind of just leave it up to me, for it. So yeah, I'm pretty much a one-man show with everything. I don't have.
Wow.
I don't like people that much. That's the thing. It's like working on myself with it.
Yeah. When did you make that transition from like, all right, instead of just working on this room, I think I'm gonna like start making this available to the public?
When I first started taking pictures of Rock Gut, when it was just the platform, main platform,
yep.
I put them on His Tank and I think Rebel Scum and maybe a few other of the forum sites.
Yep.
And everybody loved it. Everybody was going crazy for it. And then, I started getting requests. Hey, I would love a building like that. And I'm like, well, I can't make all of this. I can't shoot
yeah.
but I can do an individual building. So a little bit at a time. And eventually, I think I was doing maybe like some like apocalyptic war torn type blown out buildings. And I was doing a few of those mainly for like the GI Joe audience. And then eventually it started. I was like, well, I can actually make a full building, for Star Wars. That, that's kind of more what I'm leaning toward anyway. The sci-fi realm. And so I started making a few of those, and then it just kind of took off, and I was doing that as a side gig. Just on the weekends I would work on it, at nights work on these few buildings here and there, and then eventually I had the opportunity to just do this full time and turn it into a
really
yeah.
That's awesome.
This is my third year doing it full time.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, like, cause I always saw plenty of stuff on eBay all the time, and
yeah.
I knew you had the website, but you never know, like, how much somebody like is devoting to it or not devoting to it. So
Right.
that's cool that yeah, that you're getting full-time work out of it. That's
And
awesome. I
because
can see why.
yeah, and like the eBay stuff, that's what I can get out on eBay. And then I have a lot of guys that will send me private messages, request, hey, I'd love like 8 of these things. Can you make me a little army of these guys? Or, I need like 4 buildings because I'm going to make this Imperial complex. And I can go ahead and, work on that, knock those out. And then whatever I have time for, I'll do the eBay stuff, also. But it's cool kind of just pick
Yeah.
and choose what project. If I'm kind of burned out with doing like Imperial Gray, then I can go with slummy stuff, and then from slummy stuff I can, go with like a Tatooine theme, like all sand type structures. So I can kind of bounce around with whatever I'm in the mood for. That's the
Oh,
fun
that's
part.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
because sometimes when you do commission work, it gets repetitive and you don't feel like making the same thing over and over and over again. So it's nice
Right.
that you've diversified so much that you can, still get that creative side to it.
Yeah, because I mean, otherwise you'll lose your magic. I mean, whatever you're working on, that fire that you have in you, where you're excited about doing something, and then it just kind of starts bogging you down. Then you want to kind of brighten up and do something different. So that's the
Yeah.
good kind of hopscotch with what you want.
Now, is that how you got in touch with Chewy, Justin Cook, to like build some of the environments for his Rycroft and Enlo photo novel?
Yeah, he has sent me requests for things, and then he's picked up a few things that I've had on eBay also, and then he'll contact.
Nice.
I'd love to get some of these, extra ones. Are you able to make them? And I'll knock them out. So yeah, that's the crazy thing is seeing you'll see these these photo stories, that they'll put out there, and you don't even realize that that's your stuff in the background.
Yeah.
And my kids the other day, my 15-year-old, he told me that he wanted to, kind of make like a custom vehicle spaceship, and of course a tear runs down my eye. I'm super
Yeah.
proud. Like what kind of style theme do you want to do? And I said, because I kind of do stuff that's gritty and dirty looking. And I said, why don't you look online, try to find a vehicle of some sort, like some kind of spaceship that's kind of in the look and the realm of what you want. And it blew his mind because he came downstairs about 15 minutes later, and the search that he did on Google, it was pictures of my stuff that was on there too. So that was the
Oh,
fun.
that's so cool.
Seeing your stuff that's just, and I'll randomly search I'm looking, for ideas of things, and I'll come across my stuff, and get out of the way, and I want to get to the
Yeah,
other.
yeah. Um, Now you use a lot of like signs. Some of them are just Coca-Cola ads, or you'll have like something from Wayland Industries, but
Right.
you also have a lot of signs that are in Arabish. Now, do you just find those on the internet and then print them and then add them to your dioramas, or are you actually custom making some of those?
Yeah, most of them I'm all custom making. I'll use a airbrush font. I'll get the font for it, and then that way I'll use what's basically is like a very outdated photo editing program.
Okay.
Microsoft Digital Imager, I think is what it is.
Yep.
Image that. Another one is Photo Studio. These things are old. I mean, they're maybe almost 20 years old. This software, and they
Yeah.
kind of works on Windows 10, but but I can get those and punch in the font, on it. And then that way I can kind of tweak the wording. I can kind of make it swirly. I can make it arch. I can type whatever I want to on it, for the signs to kind of fit the area that I'm making it, for. So I can have it say, hotel or cantina or drinks, food, women, whatever I want on the side of it. I can kind of design it how I want to, and pick the colors, and I'm putting striping or any kind of detail work, any kind of the graphics, if it's framed, whatever. I can add all that to it.
And I think one of the things I really love about a lot of the imagery that you use, you incorporate a lot of really funny humor into your work, where all our dancers have most of their limbs,
Right.
or outside the doctor, there's like a space herpes.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of like really cute,
Yeah. Because
like humorous things that are like almost like little Easter eggs throughout
right.
the whole
And
diorama.
with something this big, I mean, you don't want to get bored with it. You don't want to take it too serious. You want these little Easter egg sight gags that are on it. And I
Yeah,
didn't necessarily want it to be something like Spaceballs, where the whole thing was a parody. Um,
yeah,
but I wanted it to be where, like when you're in the city, If you go to a city, you're walking around and you see everything that's established, these businesses, these fashion boutiques, whatever. But then you'll see like a ding dong, spray painted on the dumpster right down in the alleyway or something. So there's, even in real life, you have these little joke, these spots of jokes, something of humor that's going around. It could be flyers, something that's super tiny, it's not in your face, but something that's there that just makes you smirk,
gives you a good chuckle when it catches your eye. I guess as far as the play environments, um, I noticed you also like started selling like little droids as well. Were those all also made with wood and then made in resin cast later?
A little bit. Some have been. A lot of times, what I'll do is I'll kind of make them in resin first, kind of a preliminary mold, and I'll
Okay.
make part of it, and then I'll modify that, and then maybe cast another piece and add those two together, and then make a mold of that, and then see where it kind of goes from there.
Okay.
But I like to do a lot of like practical sculpting where I'll take everyday items and find something. It could be a knob, it could be a piece off a toaster, it could be anything, and it just makes a good shape. And then taking that piece and modifying it, because that's kind of what Star Wars is it's a lot of things. It's not too alien to anybody else. Everybody kind of finds a way to immerse themselves into that world. It looks completely different, but at the same time, it feels similar at the same time, with it. So if I can find everyday items and just slightly modify them and kind of blend the two together, then I can kind of create these new things that you didn't realize. Oh, that's come from something else.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll just go to a hardware store and you'll go to the plumbing section, the electrical section, and just look around at the shapes that are within that, and you'll find these things screaming at you. You just never put two and two together. Like, hey, that would make a nice generator or a fusion, whatever. You can and look in your junk drawer. A lot of times, there's things that you don't even expect that are sitting right there that you can turn into a brand new product, brand new item.
I guess we should probably get into the barge. Did you have like a whole preconceived idea? Like, I would say that your custom barge, like I would say over the past week, has generated a lot of buzz. But you had such a complete vision for it, and I got my barge like 2 weeks ago. So were you already like ready to go when that got in there? Like you already had everything kind of set out as to what you were gonna do?
Were you actually like that superhuman fast of a customizer?
Yeah, that one was kind of a whirlwind on that. I knew that I wanted to hurry up and get it out there, so that I was one of the first customizers of it. The first guys that was stupid enough to customize like a $500+
well, if you do it well, it doesn't matter. That's what I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like if I was going to completely destroy this thing for the most part, I wanted to do it right, and I didn't want to just, I didn't want to half-ass the whole thing. I wanted it so that it looked like there was a lot of work into it, that there was some sort of vision to it, and that it in and of itself, it told a story as it was. It wasn't just like take a barge and stick a couple things on it. That I would kind of make it where maybe this is a different barge from the same manufacturer. Somebody's trying to be like Jabba the Hutt, but they're not getting quite there yet. And they just kind of put some things on it that they had
their own flair, their own personalized,
and just see what happens, with it. But yeah, I knew that I wanted to completely replace the sails on it. And don't get me wrong, the barge itself is an amazing vehicle. I love the design.
Oh yeah,
everything is great with that toy. But it wasn't going to fit in with Rock Gut. That was the only thing. I wanted it to be kind of like the cruise ship of Rock Gut. And but yeah, I looked around. I knew I wanted to kind of replace the sails with the umbrellas, and I was like, where am I going to find like tiny little umbrellas that don't fit in a martini glass or something?
Yeah, right. Because it's definitely bigger than a martini glass, but.
So that was the thing. I looked on Amazon. I was able to find baby doll umbrellas that work. They completely function, and they're like for American Girl dolls or something,
Oh, nice.
So to find those, and I bought a few packs of them. They were pretty cheap, but it was like a random color assortment, so I didn't really know what I was going to get with the umbrellas. But I ended up getting them and just spray painting them to what color I wanted anyway, so it all worked out. But yeah, I took those. I already had those showed up the same day that the barge showed up. And then I think the lighting also, the light set that I had on it. So everything was kind of just screaming, go for it. Just do it right now. And I never even put the sails on there. I took the masts that I had out of the box, and I just molded and recast them, so that way I would have something to put the metal handle of the umbrella, and
Nice.
put it into it. Yeah, so it all worked out. So it's not messed up. I can put the original sails back on it, but it's just not going to look right, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Now, did you buy two barges and customize one, or is that like your only barge and you were like, I'm just doing my own thing?
That was the only one. So that's how
Nice.
I knew I shouldn't mess it up. Yeah.
No, I like I said, if you do something well, I see no problem with it. I
Right.
think, it
But
like
and that's what I knew, is that if I got the barge, left it like it was, because I was definitely going to open it up and check it out. And I knew that if I left it alone and just let it sit on a shelf and just look at it, it was going to be screaming at me, you have to do this, you have to do something with it. And I just wanted to have fun with it. And I knew if I could pull this off with rock gut, then I could do something with the barge and make it look just as good, so that it fits in and it looks intentional,
yeah.
and that I wasn't going to ruin it, and it maintains retains all the original play features too. So I didn't alter any of that.
Yeah, did you do like I noticed that the base where Jabba is, you did remove that, but everything else, like did you do a lot of modifications to the inside at all?
No, the base is still there. I hadn't even touched the interior.
Okay.
Still there. I just made a new, instead of Jabba, I have Magluta.
Yep.
So
I saw.
yeah, she's like this bubbly looking gourd lady kind of thing, like a spiderling woman.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted, was like, I didn't necessarily want like Jabba to necessarily have a connection with Rocket. Maybe he shows up every once in a while, but I
Yeah.
kind of want Rocket to have its own version of Jabba the Hutt, for it, with a little
Which
bit of,
is a cool idea, I think.
yeah. And I mean, I knew I could pull it off. So the cool thing is that, yeah, I customized her at the same time I was doing that, with the barge, because I couldn't release that until, or show everybody that finished, until I had her finished. So I was able to.
Was she originally made out of like spray foam or?
No, she was it was actually a gourd that we had in, yeah, it was, yeah. So
Oh wow.
her body was one of those bumpy gourds.
Yeah.
And then what I did was I took it and and then I added a piece up here for like the neck area, and then I flattened the bottom of it. And this is just a casting. This is all solid resin here, so the original is still gross looking. But then I coated her with a resin, so that way it kind of it filled in all the little deep pockets that would be hard to mold anyway.
Yeah.
So this way she kind of had a skin over all of her warts. And then I had to come up with a head design. I couldn't figure that out, but I already had this alien head creature that I had used before,
Nice.
So I realized I could take one of these, modify it, add some more, grossness to it, and then add some legs to it, and then make it so that, you could actually pop it off, so she can detach herself from the egg sac.
Now, is that a magnet that holds it together?
Yeah, it's a magnet.
Nice. Yeah, magnets are great.
And the great thing about it is that you can turn it, so this way she can actually turn and still look like she's coming at you, so you can bit of our, articulation, with it. Because that's the only thing with like the Job of the Hutts. You either had, one version, most of the versions of Job of the Hutt, they're all, side sitting.
Yep.
But then you have that other one where he's like kind of going forward, So with her, I wanted to have it so that she had a little bit of, variety, what you could do with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Now, are you still selling the sticker packs? Because we bought some a while back. Are you still making those?
Yeah, I can still make them. I'm hoping to have like some more of the designs with like custom made like billboards, things larger, banners and things like that. So that way, like on buildings like this one, this is all resin. This building here, and then this one's got like the banners and stuff, on the sides of it.
Yeah, that looks. I love that. Yeah.
Alien gibberish. And that's the great thing about with these, if it's not a recognizable font, you can turn these, several different ways, horizontal, vertical, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And it can say what you want to, with it. So yeah.
So if people want to check out your stuff, they should go to EmpireToyWorks.com.
That's a website I have. I don't think I've been to it in about a year.
No way, really?
Yeah, never do anything with it. Pretty much, Facebook keeps me busy like nonstop. So all of my reveals, all of my pictures and everything, I usually do like a new Instagram, Facebook picture, just kind of for fun, artsy picture.
Yeah.
Each and every day, or at least I try to. That's kind of
That's
my
fun.
to do. So that way it keeps pushing me, you do something with the lighting, add some smoke to it, do something,
Yeah.
make it look dynamic. So I try to do that every day. But yeah, Facebook, Empire Toy Works on Facebook, and then you can follow me on Instagram. Same thing, Empire Toy Works.
Nice. Anything else you want to share with the audience?
No, that's it. I know. Just keep playing with your toys, have fun, open them up, do something with them.
Oh, thanks for coming on with us. That was a really fun interview, and yeah, we'd love, if you ever have something else, we'd love to have you on again.
That sounds great. Absolutely, anytime.
All right, take care. May the force be with you.
Always.
Thanks again.